Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dick Grbac, and I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also the founder of a 33-year-old firm, Strategic Advisory Services, specializing in retirement income planning for those who are retired or for those individuals who are approaching retirement. Jeremy Joyner, our Senior Wealth Advisor and Certified Financial Planner, and Michael Wellings, our Director of Communications, will be discussing this very unique process, which is trademarked and is called Income in Stages, Money to Last. Hopefully you'll find it interesting and beneficial. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank you, Dick. My name is Jeremy Joyner, and this is Michael Wellings. We are going to go through our retirement income planning process, and we always start with our fiduciary standard pledge. Being a fiduciary requires us to put our client's interest ahead of our own. We take this very seriously. One thing you may not know is that not all investment professionals, whether they call themselves a financial planner, investment advisor, financial consultant, you name it, not all of them are required to keep or hold to a fiduciary standard. There are different requirements depending upon how an advisor is compensated. We take our requirement to act as a fiduciary, both from a CFP standpoint and a firm standpoint, very, very seriously. If you want to learn more, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to discuss this with you. We're going to move right into our retirement income planning process now, and we're going to start with the 5 big risks in retirement.
The first big risk in retirement is an increased life expectancy risk. Put flatly, people are living longer and you have to plan for it in retirement.
Then there's inflation risk. The things you buy today are going to get more expensive. That's a fact. Just think back to 1984, maybe when you bought your first car, what you paid versus what you have to pay for a new car today. That's inflation.
The third is healthcare risk. Being right next to MD Anderson, we know what the cutting edge of medical technology is, and I'll tell you, as it increases, so too do the costs.
And the big elephant in the room for a lot of folks is market risk. For the last 9 years, we've been in what's called a bull market, a growth market. We have some slides later on in this presentation to illustrate this, which has been a comfortable place for a lot of people. Not a lot of concern, not a lot of worry, but we do know for a fact we aren't always in bull markets. Stocks in general are volatile. They go up and they go down. What we know is that what investors do during those good and bad times, how they manage their emotions, has a lot to do with their success for the future.
And the fifth risk is providing financial support for other family members. As a recent college graduate, I've seen my peers graduate, go out into the job market, fail, and then end back up with mom and dad. And if mom and dad are on a fixed income, that is a serious financial burden on them. Not only do young boomerang children pose a risk, but sometimes perhaps you or your spouse has aging parents that require care, whether that be in a long-term care facility or in your own home. That's also a financial burden you may find yourself with.
And so Michael and I do a lot of videos together. We know right about now is when folks typically want to click off. We just have shorter attention spans nowadays. Please stick this out. We have a very unique process we think is quite good and certainly may answer some questions you may not even know you have going into retirement. What's the traditional approach? So how has the retirement income problem been solved historically? It's with the 60-40 portfolio allocation. 60% stock, 40% fixed income. Stock meaning equity. And you take from that 4 to 4.5% of that account out each year, increase that with inflation. It's considered a safe withdrawal. The problem is this assumes that 60-40 is going to get 6 to 7% every single year. Well, we know for a fact, and we'll show you a slide here in a moment, that's not going to be the case. You're not going to get 6 to 7% every year. You may get that over a long period of time, but what happens during 2008, 2009 when the market's down 57%? You're selling shares of stock when that occurs. And as that goes down, you may start with 1,000 shares of XYZ. You sell 250 during that difficult market to produce your income. When it recovers, 750 shares won't recover like 1,000. That's a very basic example of it, but that's what we're discussing, is that the recovery is next to impossible when you're selling shares when things are going down. So it's not working. So the problems with the traditional approach start with inflation trouble.
Right. Can your portfolio handle inflation for the long term? Will you be geared up to be able to purchase things in the future that you could easily purchase today?
What if disaster strikes? We know for a fact life happens to people. You can make the best plans, but things change. Things happen, whether it's an illness, whether it's a change in income, change in expenses. Can you handle that? Can the portfolio deal with the possibility of change?
Will your portfolio be able to provide for long-term care? Long-term care is a monkey on a bunch of people's backs in retirement. If it's not something that you're prepared for beforehand as an out-of-pocket expense or as insurance, you could be in trouble.
And finally, can you ride out a bear market? Again, if we look at history, bear market defined as a 20% drop from a prior high. We've used this slide quite a bit in discussions with clients over the years. But going back to 1946 all the way up to today, you can see every bear market we've had. It's listed here. The returns have varied from a decline of 48% over a period of 20 months to most recently a 57% decline over 18 months. During these times is what's going to make or break your success. When you retire, you might have a 30-year retirement. You will go through multiple markets like this. And so is your portfolio designed to ride out these storms, to get you through them such that you can stay retired, maintain your lifestyle? When we look at this most recent one, let's put this in perspective. If you were in that 60-40 asset allocation, 60% stock, well, the market went down 57%. So you certainly wouldn't have dropped 57%, but you probably would have dropped around 30% during that market. So if you had, let's say, $1 million and your portfolio is down to $700,000, a $300,000 decline, can you ride that out? Can you get through it? Because what after this bear market ushered in, so this is 2008 through 2007. This is almost 10 years of market performance right here, all kinds of asset classes. I want to focus on the S&P 500. The S&P 500 in 08, of course, was down 37%. In 09, it ushered in this bull market we're still in, 9 years into it, almost 10, 26%, 15%, 2, 6, 16%, 32%. The portfolio returns have been good. Recently, the last couple years, the market's been up 12%, 22%. I'll be honest with you, a monkey could do well in this kind of a market. There's all kinds of funny studies on that where monkeys are throwing darts at a dartboard and hitting stocks and picking them. This isn't it. This isn't what you're necessarily trying to deal with. You're trying to deal with, obviously, good times, but when these bad times happen, you need a portfolio that can get through these things. So we do believe we have a solution for this. So our solution, we believe, is the Income in Stages Money to Last process. We're going to break down the structure of this right now.
Right, so instead of having one single 60-40 allocation, what we at Strategic Advisory Services like to do is divide your IRA, your retirement account, into 6 separate stages, each equaling 6 years. So we break down your whole retirement into a 30-plus year picture, and we break it down into stages. So as you can see, we have stage 1 right here, which is the first 6 years. Stage 2 is years 7 through 12. Stage 3 is years 13 through 18. 4, years 19 through 24. 5, 25 through 30, and our legacy stage, which is built for 30 plus years into retirement. And the idea is to allocate a percentage of your assets to each stage, investing more conservatively in the earlier stages 1 and 2, and much more aggressively in stages 3 through our legacy stage.
And we're going to illustrate this in detail a little bit further in the presentation, but let's focus on the income stage right now. That's stage 1. So when we conceptualize bear markets happening, they typically last 1.5, 2, 3 years. And when we're in that particular bear market environment, you don't want to be selling stocks when they're down. So what we do when we build a retirement income plan is for the next 6 years income, in this case years 1 through 6 if you're currently starting retirement, we want to allocate a certain amount of money there such that it's not, or very little of it's invested in the market. So the characteristics are we want to have 6 years of inflation adjusted living expenses in stage 1. Assets are typically 90 to 100% invested in fixed income. The goal is not growth, it's income. So we call that a 0-100. The reasoning is we don't know what the market's going to do over a very short period of time. We want to avoid that volatility on the money you need right now. In the event of a recession or bear market, your immediate needs are protected. So yes, You will have assets in the portfolio, we call these the growth stages, that would be affected by the volatility. But the benefit is you don't need them right now because they're earmarked for income down the road. So each stage has a different asset allocation. So recall stage 1 being in that 0-100. Now we have stage 2 in a 40% stock allocation earmarked for years 7 through 12 of retirement. Doesn't have to be 40% stock. It could be something a little bit more conservative, say 20%. It just depends on somebody's risk tolerance. But let's say stage 3, 60% stock. Why 60% stock? Because you have 13 years, ideally, before you even need the funds. So we have 13 years to let that grow through the market, hopefully. We can't guarantee growth, but certainly 13 years historically has been a positive result. Stage 4, 80% stock. 5, 100% stock, and legacy 100% stock. So you'll see as the years extend, as the time horizon goes from 7, now 19 years, we do start with a more aggressive allocation because you have 20 years before you need the funds. As I've said, if you're advising 30-year-old self on how to invest, you would typically, for retirement, you'd say invest aggressively and save a lot. Well, that's what we have here. We have 30 years before these assets, well, almost 30 years before these assets are needed. We start with a more aggressive asset allocation. Of course, it will be affected by immediate market volatility, but that doesn't matter that much because you have so much time to recover and grow through it. So what happens after 6 years, Michael?
So naturally, your question that follows this slide is, okay, so here we are 6 years down the road. What happens to my portfolio? Well, after you deplete your stage 1 funds, the portfolio is going to be rebalanced internally. So stage 2 is going to become your new income stage. As you recall, they were about 40% invested into stocks, where they're going to shift from 40% equities to a 90 to 100% fixed income position. And then the resulting stages 3 through legacy, are going to be shifted down the allocation structure, which we're going to visualize here in a second. But if you recall, the overall asset allocation for the whole portfolio is going to be at or near 60%. So here we are with our visualization of the distribution analysis. And you can see this income producing stage, stage 1, 0% stock, 100% bonds. And you can see stage 2, 3, 4 all increasing with their stock allocation, the assets in growth stages. So 6 years down the road, you've had a good 6 years. We're in year 7 through 12 now. As you can see, the stock allocation was shifted down to 0, and stage 2 is now the income producing stage, with 3, 4, 5 and legacy being assets in growth. So here we are another 6 years down the road. Stage 3 is going to be the new income producing stage, with 4, 5 and legacy being the growth stages. 19 years down the road, stage 4 is now income producing stage. 25 years down the road, stage 5 is now the income producing stage. And as you've noticed, the legacy allocation has remained at 100% stocks, fully invested. So you might be asking, well, why is that? So let's take a look at our legacy stage a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, the design of legacy for some people, and it's less common than you might think, is, well, I want to leave what I started with to my heirs. So if it's $1 million or 200,000, whatever the number is, I want to leave it. I want to make sure that they're taken care of. Heirs being children, typically. In that particular case, we can allocate a certain amount of money in the beginning of the plan such that it can grow, or hopefully can grow, has an opportunity to grow back to what you started with. The other is, the more common usage of legacy is for the what if. What if I have extended long-term care? What if there's an unexpected financial emergency in retirement? It's a place to go for assets that aren't necessarily earmarked for retirement income. And we've used this over the course of the last decade as we've implemented this plan. I can think of several occasions where there's been an unexpected expense. We've gone to legacy to fund that expense, and it's had zero effect on their current income. And so with this plan, we're wanting to address the 5 big risks. Market risk, of course, is the one that's on most people's mind as they enter retirement. The increase of cost of living problem, it's a guarantee your inflation, things will get more expensive. Life expectancy, what if you live longer than you expect or that you might think you will? Can you afford to deal with that? Providing for your family, if a goal is leaving what you started with to your family, well, this is a plan that can address that. And finally, the healthcare risk. When we build a plan, we often discuss the cost of healthcare, and we want to split that out, grow that at a different rate, and make sure that it's funded throughout retirement. Because without your health, what's the point, right? You want to be healthy, you want to be able to afford the best health care possible for yourself in retirement. We're going to look at a sample here of John and Mary.
Right, I'd like to introduce everybody to John and Mary. They're 65 years old. They're ready to retire. So together they've accumulated about $1 million, and they're expecting to receive approximately $36,000 a year from Social Security. So you can see below we've got their needs built out. They have non-discretionary needs of $75,000 a year. Now these needs are the needs that they have to have. These are what they need to keep the lights on. You can see they have discretionary needs, the I want tos, of $10,000 a year for 10 years. They'd like to travel and budget $5,000 a year for 15 years for travel, and they'd like to leave $1 million legacy for their 2 children.
So we go through a preliminary planning process where we first start with ages, current ages. We start with the non-discretionary income need. We throw in other income sources, whether it's pension income, Social Security, and the discretionary needs are built in down below, and it comes up quickly with an assets needed to retire. Hopefully, if you're retiring, you know how much you need, and you're making a good decision as you enter retirement. Oftentimes, we've met with folks that have retired not really knowing if they can actually afford it. And to us, that's a very dangerous move. Knowing whether or not you can afford to retire is very, very important. And we want to answer that quickly for folks, because if you can't, then we got to get to the drawing board and figure out how to get you there. Whether it's increasing savings or decreasing expenses, we've done it all. We've seen it all. So certainly we can help. And then we want to build any desired legacy. Typically, it's what they start with because we want to use it for the what if. So we build in all these assumptions into the plan initially, and it comes up with a cash flow analysis. First, what is the fixed need? $75,000 growing with inflation is $100,000 10 years down the road. I'd love to say you're getting pay raises, but you're not. What this is just inflation. That $100,000 will buy the same amount of stuff that $75,000 will, like in 10 years from now. The additional needs, these are the discretionary needs. You can see we've inflation adjusted them. We're offsetting that with any income. These needs minus any income available to help fund those needs then drives what does the portfolio need to actually produce in order to keep John and Mary retired. Starting with $90,000 a year, dropping to $56,000 when Social Security kicks in, and you can see really just a steady inflationary incline there over time. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, this first 6 years, we've allocated towards stage 1. So what that looks like is instead of that just traditional 60-40, it looks like $298,000 allocated in a stage 1 asset allocation. Stage 2, $238,000. 3, $187,000. And you can see each of these, if you focus on this number here and this number here, are getting more aggressive in their initial asset allocation from 40% stock to 60% stock. Stage 4, $138,000, 5, and of course legacy. So we've got 6 asset allocations, and what's really unique about our process is we can do all this in one account. So it's not like you would have 6 different investment accounts. This is one account, all designed to help you achieve a retirement income goal. And you'll notice that when you combine all this up, each of these individual stages, which have a different purpose, unique purpose, it's still about a 60% stock, 40% fixed income allocation. Now that varies. Some people are more aggressive than others. Some people have higher income needs in the beginning years than they do in the latter years, and it can alter this asset allocation a little bit. But the 60-40 is still very appropriate because inflation's a problem. You need equities to outpace inflation. But how you go about structuring that income and providing the income to yourself is extremely important, because what we know is we're going to have those bear markets, and when assets are down, people typically a lot of times make bad decisions. And so if we can earmark and say, look, I know the portfolio's down, that's normal, that's part of investing in retirement, but you have 12, 13, 20 years before you need these assets that are down in value. Hang in there, and you'll hopefully we should recover and you'll achieve your desired goal. Now there's no guarantees, of course, but history says if we can just stick it out, we'll be successful.
One of the tools at our disposal that we love to use is what we call stress test. So with John and Mary, we've taken their goals, we've taken their desires, their expenses, and their assets and our recommendations, and we have a stress test at our disposal which runs their results against 1,000 different market scenarios. So that says, okay, we have these results, and we're running against good markets, bad markets, sideways markets, and out of 1,000 markets, how many times do they succeed? So this 84% probability of success means that out of those 1,000 markets, they succeeded in their goals 840 times.
And so, why is that critical? Because there is no advisor that can predict the market. There is no special stock pickers necessarily. They may think they are, but they're lying to you, and they're probably lying to themselves. In reality, they're guessing, and they're gambling with your funds. So we don't play that game. We build strategic, structured asset allocations, stick with them for a long period of time, and this will tell us, given how many different market scenarios, which ones are successful, as Michael just mentioned. We then take that plan and we run it against life, because that's going to happen. You're going to come in here 2 years after you retire and say, our expenses are just going up faster than we thought. What happens if we take a little bit more income from the portfolio? We immediately start adjusting, building in some techniques, and coming up with how does that probability of success change. Well, if it drops below, say, 80%, we got to get back to the drawing board and figure out what can we do to help this be more successful. It's not guessing at what future returns are going to be. It's using a very sophisticated analysis to come up with a pretty safe probability is the goal. So in conclusion, first of all, we thank you for your time and attention during this presentation. We hope you've learned something from it. But we've been doing this a long time. Dick Gbac's been doing this for 45 years, 33 years with this company that he started back in 1985. He and Susie started. Susie is also a founder of the firm. But this is your team. One thing unique about our firm is we pride ourselves on the customer service we provide. We think it's unmatched. So if you have any questions, any concerns, give us a call. Our phone number is 713-977-3800, or go to our website. You can learn more about this, about all the services we provide. We look forward to hearing from you soon.